lecture, An Approach to Endomyocardial Biopsy by Dr. Sudhir Kumar Arava, who is a professor in the Department of Pathology, AIIMS, New Delhi. The chairperson for the session is Dr. Parinita SS, Professor, Department of Pathology, SDM College of Medical Sciences and Hospital, Dharwad. Madam, the areas of interest of madams are oncopathology and cytopathology, and she has over 18 articles published in various international and national journals. She is the executive committee member in KCIAPM. Thank you, ma'am, for accepting our invitation and chairing the session. Over to you, madam, for introducing the speaker.
I thank organizing team for inviting me to chair the session. Hope I am audible.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. Yes. It gives me immense pleasure to introduce Dr. Sudhir. It's a nostalgic moment indeed for me, as I'm connected with many of the pathologists where some of us did post-graduation during same time. Like Dr. Raghavendra, he was my postgraduate colleague, and Dr. Sudhir, Dr. Bomanalli sir, Dr. Hari sir, most of us did post-graduation together. And Dr. Sudhir Kumar Arava, additional professor, AIIMS, New Delhi. He has contributed to 10th edition of Robbins, textbook of pathology. He has been awarded Dr. N.C. Nayak Gold Medal for Best Senior Resident. And he was principal investigator for 2 extramural and 1 intramural project in cardiovascular diseases. He is founder member of Virtual Teaching Society of India. He is also executive member and treasurer of Dermatopathology Society of India. He has around 190 publications in national and international journals. His field of interest are cardiac and pulmonary pathology and dermatopathology. I welcome Dr. Sudhir for presentation on approach to endomyocardial biopsy. Over to you, Dr. Sudhir.
Thank you very much, Madam, Dr. Pranita. So I would like to thank all the organizing committee members and Dr. Basuraj, he is my colleague and my best friend, for giving me this opportunity to talk on endomyocardial biopsy. And special thanks, I can see Dr. Shashikala Madam online. I'm very happy to see ma'am. How are you, ma'am? Very good morning. I can still see the lab where I used to sit. And how are you, ma'am? Thank you. Ma'am is mute. You have to unmute, madam.
Very nice to see you, Sudhir. I was talking about you and telling all my colleagues and PGs about you. And one more thing to add into Sudhir's CV. Hope the organizers will allow me. Sudhir was a very young, eligible bachelor when he was with us. All our girls, were behind Sudhir. They said, "Ha." Very nice to see you, Sudhir.
Thank you very much, ma'am. Thank you very much. And I also say that today is Dr. Basuraj's birthday, so I'll wish him. So we'll all wish you a very happy birthday, Dr. Basuraj. So can I share my screen now?
Yes, sir. Yes.
Okay. All of you can see my screen, and am I audible to all of you?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I'll go on. So today's main topic, although during our MBBS times class, cardiovascular pathology is one of the main big chapter. So usually everybody will say that it's a big chapter. It will start in systemic pathology, actually starts with cardiovascular pathology. But when it comes to pathology later on, so usually it is neglected, because in most of the center, the biopsy is not being done, and most of the undergraduate and postgraduate people, they don't know how to read endomyocardial biopsy, because nowadays more and more of invasive procedures are coming up in all over the world. So definitely today or tomorrow, when you go out with the MD pathology degree, you will have endomyocardial biopsy, because more and more number of heart transplants are being done all over India. The number and the centers are doing heart transplantation are gradually increasing every year all over India. So today I'm going to talk about, if you get an endomyocardial biopsy, how to interpret, how to read it, how to come to a diagnosis and conclusion. And it is a basic, very basic approach for predominantly concentrating on the undergraduate, postgraduate students. I have no financial disclosures for this presentation. And in today's lecture, I'm going to talk about what is the endomyocardial biopsy, how it is done, if you get a sample, what is the adequacy criteria, and how do we have to process the sample, what are the common indications and complications of endomyocardial biopsy, and how to read. Now, there are methodology in reading in all small biopsies, and what do we see in various cardiovascular diseases, the observations on histopathology, and special component regarding transplant endomyocardial biopsy. It's a very big topic, so I will be covering it in a few slides in this. And very important must know observations with examples, and finally the take home message. So brief introduction regarding the history, why this endomyocardial biopsy started. So actually in 1958, the Weinberg, he accidentally he took actually 5 endomyocardial biopsies, and he happened to see and happened to diagnose 2 out of 5 definitive myocardial disease. And he came to know that there is some importance when you see and examine these heart muscle biopsies. In 1960, the Sutton & Sutton, he carried out the same procedure, and he performed 150 biopsies in 54 patients. He also found that instead of doing all indirect serological, radiological markers, if you examine a definitive heart muscle under microscopy, you will get a lot of information and you can have a definitive diagnosis. And finally, later on, the Sakakibara and Kono, these are the 2 individuals who actually developed a flexible cardiac biotome catheter where it made easy to take out endomyocardial biopsies in live patients. And later on, this catheter was later on modified by a Stanford group of individuals. And today, in most of the centers, cardiology centers, where they do endocardial biopsy, this is the catheter what they use. This is 7F. This is actually diameter of the lumen, cardiac biotome. You have 2 lengths. One, it's about 45 to 50 centimeters, where you can approach the heart through internal jugular vein. And one is about 100 centimeters, where you can approach the heart through femoral vein route. Most commonly, both the route can be accessed. And this biopsy, when you see it, is always radio opaque. It has to be monitored under X-ray. It is made up of stainless steel, and it has a cutting jaws, and it is very flexible. I'll show you a few of the important. This is the closer view of this cardiac biopsy. There's a long catheter here. If you see the tip of the catheter, it is just like a jaws. You can close and you can open it. You can make out how it is opening and closing. And this catheter will be inserted through the internal jugular vein, and it will be traced. It enters the superior vena cava. From there, it enters the right atria. Through the right atria, along the flow of blood, it enters the tricuspid valve and finally enters into the right right ventricular cavity. And this is flexible. Once the catheter enters the right ventricular cavity, you can bend the catheter and you can see the tip. You can take multiple biopsy from the intraventricular septum. So this is the area where usually the endomyocardial biopsy is taken. See how the catheter is inserted. It is entering into the right atria, right ventricle, and it is touching the intraventricular septum, right side, and how the biopsy is taken up. Okay, this is the 2. If you push the handle down, the cutting edge will open. If you pull it, pull up the hands, so it will take up the biopsy. You can see the closer view of this biopsy tip. Okay. Now, where exactly these biopsies are taken, the site of biopsy. If you see the schematic diagram, the yellow part is thick intraventricular septum, and the red part is a membranous part of intraventricular septum. And biopsy is usually taken from a right side of this intraventricular septum towards the right ventricular cavity. Why is it so? Why only this part is preferred, not the other part of the cardia? One, it is thick. Intraventricular septum is thick. And if you see, if you are evaluating a diffuse or generalized cardiac disease, This interventricular septum, it represents both right ventricle and also the left ventricle. The common disease is common septum. That it shows that disease process will also involve the septum, and even it is always there on the flow of blood from the atria, ventricles. It goes up to the pulmonary trunk. It is always there on the flow of blood, so it is easy to perform the procedure. And one thing is, even if it is performed by inexperienced interventional cardiologist or cardiologist, even if you make small amount of mistake, the chances of perforation is very less. You can escape. If you take biopsy from the right ventricular free wall, sometimes the patient may land up in hemopericardium and the patient can die on table itself. Okay. And what if the disease process is limited to the left ventricle, not the right ventricle? Can I do endomyocardial biopsy in this kind of a scenario? Yes, you can do. If you think that the disease process is limited to the left ventricle, you can always approach through femoral artery approach, where it will be catheter will be passed in a retrograde fashion. It enters the aorta, left atria and left ventricle. You can flex it wherever you feel. Radiologists say that there is a disease process, you can take the biopsies. So this is the two common sites where usually endomyocardial biopsies are taken. What are the indications? Okay, so what are the indications? If you see the indications, the first and the foremost indication for examination of endomyocardial biopsy is in heart transplant individuals. Once the individual is heart transplanted, to see the rejection status, we carry out surveillance biopsies. Why we carry out surveillance biopsies, that I'm going to tell you in my next few slides when I talk about heart transplantation. Next, in a clinically suspected cases of myocarditis, when there is inflammation they're suspecting, if you want to diagnose that it is a true myocarditis, they do endomyocardial biopsies. In certain clinical scenarios of cardiomyopathies, where it includes hypertrophic, dilated, restrictive, and arrhythmogenic right ventricular cardiomyopathies. In these scenarios, if it is classical, radiologically and clinically, they will not do endomyocardial biopsy. When there is a diagnostic dilemma, even after multidisciplinary approach, they do carry out endomyocardial biopsies. Yes, for sure, in all cases of infiltrative cardiomyopathies, when they are suspecting isolated cardiac sarcoidosis, amyloidosis of the heart, tuberculosis involvement of the heart, they do endomyocardial biopsy. And the American Heart Association also says that in all sudden unexplained heart failure patients, where cardiac angiogram will be normal, clinically you cannot rule out, those patients, it is the gold standard to examine the heart muscle biopsy on microscopy. And when you have a clinical dilemma between whether this is a true restrictive cardiac myopathy due to primary heart muscle disease or due to pericardial disease, so in that kind of a scenario, they do endomyocardial biopsy. And later on, you have a neoplasia. Especially the most important is when you have a primary cardiac tumors where you cannot differentiate, that time the biopsy is of importance for characterization. And other rare diseases are when you suspect other diseases like drug toxicity, low-flow endomyocarditis, hemochromatosis of involvement of heart, endomyocardial fibroelastosis and other infections. These are the least common site where they can do endomyocardial biopsy for diagnostic evaluation. So residents should know at least 5 to 6 indications to carry out endomyocardial biopsies. Okay, I spoke about the procedure, I spoke about the indications, but majority of the centers, they are not carrying out this endomyocardial biopsy. What is the reason? Is there any complications regarding this or not? So when you see this, I agree that endomyocardial biopsy is an invasive procedure, but when you see the overall incidence of complications is extremely low, so 1 to 2%. And even if you find the cardiac tamponade is one of the common and serious indications, but it is seen only in 0.14%. But at our institute is still have not recorded any evidence of mortality or cardiac tamponade when it is done by experienced cardiologist or experienced interventional radiologist. So the mortality is no, it is extremely low mortality. Complications are very low. But if you want to mention what can happen, the complications if the endomyocardial biopsy is performed by an inexperienced person. So there are major complications and minor complications. Someone can unmute Dr. Spaya. The major complications are the hemopericardium, cardiac tamponade. The patient later on develop mediastinitis because procedure-related inflammation. Sometimes he can develop pneumothorax, pneumopericardium, and if the procedure is carried out for a longer time, it can cause a small amount of blood clot that can dislodge, leading to thromboembolism. And rarest of the rares, if the hygienic practices are not carried out, then we have chances of transmitting the infectious organisms like hepatitis B and C. And one of the most common damage that occurs during endomyocardial biopsy, because the catheter has to pass through either tricuspid or bicuspid valve, you can damage these valves and a minor degree of regurgitation can happen, but it is not serious. Minor complications include the patient may develop mild kind of chest pain, transient chest pain that can be treated. He might have some kind of minor transient ECG abnormalities. We might, while doing the procedure, we may rupture some kind of cardiac tendinae, but it is usually not serious. Tricuspid valve damage, hematoma and hypertension are usually rare. So overall, the complications are extremely low. You can carry out or initiate this procedure at your institution. Yes, we have done the biopsy, and are there, just like any other small biopsies, even in endomyocardial biopsies, you have some adequacy criteria. All of you should know. So in the first picture, you know how the biopsy is taken. So it is taken out by pinching method. So this is the tip. You can pinch small part of the endocardium, take one biopsy, and put back the needle, take one more biopsy. So you have to take multiple biopsies at the interventricular septum right side. So what is the adequacy criteria? So international guideline says that you have to have a 5 minimum endomyocardial fragments. In the right hand picture, I'm showing 3, 1, 2, and 3. This kind of fragments, you should have 5 different fragments, and each fragment at least it should measure somewhere around 1 to 2 cubic millimeter, so that you can interpret in a better way. And in each fragment, if you consider this fragment, in each fragment, more than 50% of the area should contain myocardium. So these are the certain criteria. When you call it as borderline, any fragment of 3, we call it as borderline adequacy, and any fragment below than 3, 2, 1, we label it as inadequate fragments, or any number of fragments where there is less than 50% of the myocardium which contains only blood and fibrin, we label it as inadequate. So this definitive criteria, all of you should remember. One thing, these are the criteria. So criteria are always there, but nobody follows the criteria. In majority of the institutions where the endomyocardial biopsy is done, the normal, including at our institution, the normal endomyocardial fragments what we get are 3, more than sufficient to carry out diagnostic evaluation. But more number of fragment, more number of specificity, you can interpret in a better way, and it is easy to diagnose. This is the adequacy criteria. These are some endomyocardial fragments which are found to be adequate. You have to see the endocardium, you have to see the myocardium, very good. Myocardium, there is one fragment, good fragment. If you see the adjacent fragment, it is actually tiny. Okay, so it is less than 1 to 2 cubic millimeter. But taking biopsy, 3 biopsy is more than sufficient. This is one biopsy where Masson trichrome stain has been done in this. So if you see this kind of fragments, 5, you can label it as adequate for evaluation. Just like any other adequacy criteria in the histopathology or cytology, this is the adequacy criteria in case of endomyocardial biopsies. See these biopsies. The clinicians has taken out biopsies, multiple biopsies. See these fragments. It contains only fibrin. It has blood clot, some part of fat here, and only one or two myocardial fragments. So if you see these kind of fragments, whatever may be the number, you call it as inadequate biopsy. Okay. Biopsy has been taken out and it will be given to you. The clinicians will ask how to do, how to process, where to put this biopsy in the formalin. So one thing all of you should remember that before the clinician takes up the biopsy, you need to have a multidisciplinary approach regarding the clinical scenario and possible diagnosis of the patients. If they have some differential diagnosis, you have to plan and keep these biopsies according to your criteria. One thing, see, more than 95% of the cases, not even 99% of the cases, everything, every diagnosis, special stains, immunohistochemistry can be done by putting these biopsy fragments in 10% buffered formalin. All the things can be done, no need. But in case, if you want to do some molecular analysis, nowadays, if you have a good 10% neutral buffer formalin, you can extract the tissue and submit the same tissue for molecular analysis, and you also get very good results. But if you want to plan prior, you can keep one biopsy in liquid nitrogen for PCR studies, for in case if you suspect a viral myocarditis for viral markers. You can, if you want to do immunofluorescence, or if you want to do in situ hybridization techniques in certain cardiac tumors. So that time you have to keep one fragment and liquid nitrogen frozen. If you think that by clinical evaluation, I need some kind of electron microscopic study, you have to keep one fragment in 2.5% of glutaraldehyde and process for electron microscopic samples. So this is how you have to divide, and you have to plan before you get the biopsy to your department. So as I said, majority of the things can be done by putting these biopsies in 10% neutral buffer formalin. One, you have received the biopsies, you have processed the samples, then how to go about. The normal procedure, what we follow and what the criteria says, you have to examine endomyocardial biopsy at different levels, because taking biopsy from the heart is extremely important, and it is tedious, and it is you cannot repeat the biopsies again and again. So you have to be very diligent while examining each and every fragment of endomyocardium, and you have to examine at different levels. So what we do, once the paraffin blocks is ready, we will cut these blocks into 10 slides. All the 10 slides you can see here. First slide will be subjected for HND evaluation, a routine HND stain. Second, third, and fourth stain will be kept unstained, will not do any stain. Again, fifth slide will do again HND stain. Sixth, seventh, eighth, ninth will be unstained, and 10th will see HND stains. So we have 3 HND stains at different levels. We'll examine all the 3 slides, see where the pathology is maximum. If you see there is some inflammation, some pathology is here, which is not present here or here, you can subject these adjacent slides for your respective IHC studies or any special histochemical stains. So that's why we take 10 sections, and once first, fifth, and 10th slides will be subjected for routine HND stain. Okay, slides are ready, and you need to interpret these endomyocardial biopsy fragments. So one thing I would like to highlight to all the postgraduates here is, this procedure, what I'm going to mention, is not only for endomyocardial biopsy, it is same, and you have to practice this habit in all small biopsies and all histopathology samples. If you practice this protocol, you will never forget anything, and your diagnosis most of the times will be accurate. So what are these? You know the fragment where it has been taken. I'm not talking about endomyocardial biopsy. Whatever may be the thing, try to identify all the components in it. Here we have the normal anatomical component. For example, in endomyocardial biopsy, what are the components you get to see? One is endocardium, and you have subendocardium. Below that, you have myocardium, interstitial blood vessels, and interstitium. These are the only 5 components what you can interpret and what you can see and what you are know. And try to evaluate, observe, concentrate on each component, write down your details, and summarize in the end. You will get the diagnosis in most of the cases. This is very important. Let's see. Endocardium, it is considered to be normal. In normal scenario, the endocardium in the first picture, down picture, it is very closely lies just above the myocardium. The subendocardial space is extremely minimal. Okay, if you see this kind of a thing, you can say normal endocardium. Second, see this, the myocardium here, the endocardium, it is thickened. So what kind of thickening? Whether it is a fibrotic thickening, we need to carry out empty stain for demonstration. If it is, there are certain conditions, for example, hypertrophic cardiomyopathy, endocardial fibrosis, endomyocardial fibrosis, you need to demonstrate this with special stains and HND. And fibroelastic thickening, this one more, you need to do elastic stain. Can you see this, the upper picture? The subendocardium is thickened, and can you see this is the VVG stain, whereas Van stain, you can still make out elastic tissue in the subendocardial place. So this is important, and it is commonly observed when there is ventricular dilatations. So this you should remember, fibroelastic. Sometimes in subendocardial place, you need to see whether there is any inflammatory cell infiltrate or not. This is a very important when you are evaluating transplant endocardial biopsy to see the rejection status. Are there any smooth muscle cells? Smooth muscle cells, metaplasia in subendocardial space, it is being documented in whenever there is a atrial or ventricular dilatation occurs. Okay, so these are the observations we have to identify, which are commonly seen in endomyocardial biopsy. Sometimes because of repeated procedure or some damage, you might see thrombus somewhere here. So you need to mention that. If you see thrombus, the chances of thromboembolism in that patient is high. So these are the observations or points you have to note down in your record. Next comes the myocardium. So what all can we see in myocardium? So all of you know the anatomy, right? The myocardium, normally, we always say that it is arranged in a syncytial pattern. So each and every myocardium, they are connected to each other just to transmit the electrical impulse from atria to the ventricle for better contraction. Normally, the interstitium between these cardiac myocytes extremely rare. I mean, extremely scant, very scant. You cannot make out, just like your interstitium, how you cannot make out in alveolar septae. It is just like that. So what happens when you have a hypertrophy? When do you say hypertrophy? Hypertrophy is that, see, can you see, there is irregular variation in cardiac muscles. See the nucleus, there is variation in nuclear size, nuclear indentation, cookie cutter nucleus. If you observe all those things, you can mention that there is hypertrophy of the heart. And you can see the vascular degeneration here, degenerative changes. And the pigment, what you're saying is lipofuscin pigment, normally you see in heart. Is there any inflammation or inflammatory process in the myocardium causing destruction of the heart? You need to mention. And if there is any ischemic focus, you need to mention the ischemic fibers and write down or note down in your notebook, which is helpful for your final interpretations. Again, there are some pictures showing marked hypertrophy of the myocardium. There is myocardial inflammation. And if you see a lot of vascular degeneration in cardiac myocyte, so not only in cardiac myocyte, in any cell, if you see a lot of vascular degeneration, that indicates that it is a reversible kind of a cell death. Okay, so these are the cases. If you don't treat the disease at this stage, this will undergo death. If you treat it properly at this stage, it can be reversed back. In case of hypertrophic cardiomyopathy, you do see a lot of disarray of cardiac myocytes. All of you can make out in this. This is the empty stain. There is crisscross arrangement and lateral branching of this cardiac myocyte, and there is interstitial fibrosis in between. So if you see this, your diagnosis will be towards hypertrophic cardiomyopathy. So in some cases of rheumatic heart disease, where the patient present with tachyarrhythmia, sometimes if you're lucky enough, you may see perivascular aggregation of Aschoff nodules also. So this is important. These are the important things that you have to observe in your myocardium. Then next component is intramyocardial blood vessels. So we have to go in methodical order. Each component, concentrate, observe, and write down your details. Whether I'm seeing any kind of a perivascular inflammation or any evidence of vasculitis, are there any dysplasia of the media? Are there any thrombus in the lumen? is there any deposition of amyloid or any fibrosis in the perivascular region? Each component has its specific importance while evaluating clinically by the clinicians in the end when you discuss the case. So these things we have to note down in the intramyocardial blood vessels. The last component is interstitium. We have seen endocardium, subendocardial space, myocardium, intramyocardial blood vessels, and the only thing left is interstitium. As I mentioned earlier, interstitium, what all you can see inflammatory cell infiltrate, and you can see fibrosis. Wherever you suspect fibrosis, it has to be demonstrated by doing special histochemical stains, that is mass and tricho. There are two types of fibrosis that we observe in heart. One, fibrosis present around the myocytes. Each and every myocyte is surrounded by fibrosis that has been shown in the picture 1. So this kind of fibrosis, we call it as intermyofiber fibrosis. If you see this kind of a change, it usually indicates it is a reactive fibrosis. Commonly seen in case of restrictive cardiomyopathies, uncontrolled hypertension, aortic stenosis. So when you have those kind of diseases, you see this kind of biopsy that usually indicates reactive conditions. But in some cases, when you see this second picture, in the down component, the part of the cardiac muscles, they are not there and they are replaced by fibrosis. So this kind of a fibrosis, we call it as replacement fibrosis. Fibrosis is replacing the cardiac myocytes. Why it is replacing cardiac myocytes? Cardiac myocytes have undergone death in this region. So when you see this kind of replacement myofibrosis, it strongly indicates that the patient has some kind of ischemic evidence. You have to alert the clinician, look for and go for angiography. See, especially in heart transplant scenario, they have to go for angiographic studies. They will monitor it very closely. So these two different types of fibrosis you have to remember when you are evaluating endomyocardial fibrosis. Later on, any other deposits. The most common deposits what we see in heart is amyloid. So amyloid can also be deposited in the interstitium, that we have to see. But when you are evaluating any small biopsies, one thing we should remember, you have to concentrate and evaluate each and every fragment of the small biopsies. That all of you should follow this rule. Residents, you will not miss anything. Out of 5 fragments, if one fragment like this, according to our adequacy criteria, it is actually inadequate. The biopsy fragment is good, but I am not seeing any cardiac myocytes, less than 50%. So according to me, it is inadequate fragment. This particular fragment is inadequate, but does it give any importance? If you observe this, even if it is inadequate, can you someone unmute? Even if it is inadequate, you need to observe the fragment that you have to make follow this habit. If you see this fragment, it contains a lot of fat cells, but when you observe, this fragment is lined by some cuboidal epithelium, that is mesothelial cells. If clinician is doing biopsy, endomyocardial biopsy, and I am getting mesothelial cells, is it alerting or not? What does it indicate? It indicates that while doing procedure, he has punctured the heart, taken biopsy from the myocardium. If you see this kind of a fragment, call up immediately the clinician, say that I am seeing pericardium. Kindly observe the patient for cardiac tamponade or hemopericardium. So this ultimate, you have to call them once you see this, call him up and tell him so that he can observe the patient closely. So these are the things you have to remember. Certain artifacts that can cause a very important diagnostic challenge in endomyocardial biopsy or in any small biopsies, even in previous biopsies, like when Dr. Raghavendra showed the endomyocardial biopsy fragment, you could find out this kind of a pinch artifact. This pinch artifact you do see because they're taking pinch of the cardiac myocardium, endomyocardial fragment, you do see, but you have to alert the clinicians that you should not mishandle these small biopsies, or recurrent pinching should not be done. All small biopsies should not be held in a forceps microscope, forceps, because it altered the morphology. Even it is a very important fragment. When you get the sample is adequate, it is invaluable for evaluations. So these are the things we have to convey to the clinician and improve his procedural skills. You have to show him, see, this is the thing, teach him. So this kind of a collaboration you need to develop not only in cardiac pathology, you need to develop in each and every systemic pathology at your center. Then only you will understand the disease process well. So this is called pinching artifact. Second is telescoping. Telescoping matlab, so one blood vessels present in the lumen of other blood vessels. How can this happen? This we call it as telescoping. When you are interpreting endometrial fragments, you do see gland in gland appearance. The similar thing you see in vessel appearance. Okay, because what happens, these muscular arteries are elastic in nature. When they pinch the blood, they will stretch. So when you release the pressure, suddenly some part of the vessel goes inside the lumen. So this is normal artifact. Even in endometrial biopsies, gland in gland appearance is because of this. But this may cause a very diagnostic problem if you don't know regarding this. While interpreting heart transplant biopsies, it can lead to deleterious diagnosis. So this you should keep in mind. Another thing, contraction bands. So all of you know that each and every heart muscle, they have contractile ability. When you take out the small biopsy, suddenly these biopsy fragments will go for hypercontractions. So all of you know that the cardiac muscle has sarcomere. So there is hypercontraction of the sarcomere. You will see the Z band which are prominent here. This we call it as contraction bands, which is normally seen in some case of endomyocardial fragments. But if you see these contraction bands with lot of inflammation and edema, you have to call it as contraction band necrosis. This is evidence of true myocytolysis, cardiac muscle damage that usually seen in case of reperfusion injuries. Okay. And procedure related hemorrhage that can be seen in any small fragments, but this you should be aware and you should not misinterpret this while evaluating transplant biopsies as severe rejection. These are the artifacts you should remember normally. So what can be done? All the special stains, all the ISC markers, what you can do in regular pathology, that can be performed in endomyocardial fragmentary as well. That depends on your HE interpretation and clinical scenario. Anything can be done on these fragments. Let's see the importance of endomyocardial fragments in few cardiac diseases. I'm going to highlight only few things. Okay. In the evaluation of myocarditis, when clinicians suspect myocarditis, acute myocarditis, cardiac enzymes are elevated, he wants to diagnose whether there is inflammation in the heart or not. They do endomyocardial biopsies. So if you see this kind of inflammatory cell infiltrate causing myocyte damage, it has to damage these inflammatory cells. They have to eat up the myocardium. So cardiac fiber, it is eating up. So if you see this kind of microscopic feature, we call it as myocyte damage. Alternatively, we also label it as myocyte necrosis. This is the definitive criteria for the diagnosis of myocarditis. And this criteria, we call it as Dallas criteria because it was first documented in Dallas conference. So it's called as Dallas criteria. But sometimes what will happen, you do see some kind of an inflammatory infiltrate in the interstitium, but definitive myocyte damage you cannot see, you cannot make out. So this type of a category, we call it as borderline myocarditis. This terminology is obsolete now. We still call it as myocarditis if you see more than 14 lymphocytes per square millimeter of the biopsy. And yes, I saw inflammation in myocarditis. Can I go ahead and give some more information to the clinician and treat patients? Depending on the inflammatory infiltrate, which is predominant, you still can give certain advice or guidance to the clinicians. What is, if you see a predominantly lymphocytic infiltration, the common etiology that we see in autoimmune myocarditis or viral myocarditis. If you see predominantly neutrophilic, usually it indicates bacterial and fungal infections, even in some cases of early viral infections. If eosinophils are predominating, it indicates the clinician that he has to monitor and rule out hypersensitivity myocarditis or hypereosinophilic syndrome. He will do further investigation according to your observations. If you see granuloma, that definitive indications of sarcoidosis and tuberculosis, that nowadays more and more isolated cardiac sarcoidosis are being turning up. So identification of granulomas is very important for proper diagnosis and treatment. Sometimes giant cell myocarditis. This is in this giant cell myocarditis. What it is, I'm showing you pictures, then you will understand in a better way. This is a very medical emergency procedure. The patient usually comes with sudden onset of heart failure. Everything is normal, but endomyocardial biopsy, if you perform at that scenario, if you see multiple giant cells, you can label it as giant cell myocarditis. If you tell the clinicians, he will start the patient on steroids, you can save the life. If you don't treat, patient will die. So these are the important aspects of endomyocardial fragments. Yes. There's some terminologies all of you should remember when to say the active myocarditis and biopsy. As I mentioned, showed you in previous slides. If you see inflammatory cell infiltrate with myocardial damage, you can label it as active myocarditis. Borderline myocarditis, there is inflammatory infiltrate, no active myocyte damage. If there are no inflammation, you can label it as no evidence of myocarditis. But no evidence of myocarditis does not mean that the patient is not having myocarditis. So he might be having myocarditis because inflammatory process is patchy in nature, but we are taking biopsy only in the interventricular septum. The chances of picking up the disease process is less. Okay, that you should remember. If clinicians want to follow this patient later, so if you are saying active myocarditis, he will treat with immunoglobulins or corticosteroids. The patient is improving or not improving. He wants to see if he does again second endomyocardial biopsy, what you should do, you have to see the previous biopsy and compare with the recent biopsy. If the inflammation is similar, the amount and quantity of inflammation is similar, then your terminologies will be ongoing or persistent myocarditis, with or without fibrosis. If you say the inflammatory infiltrate has come down or less, you call it as healing myocarditis. If there are no inflammatory cells when compared to previous first biopsy, you can mention it as healed myocarditis. So these are the terminologies you should remember. Whenever you see fibrosis, few things that you should remember. You have to demonstrate fibrosis by doing special MT stain and mention where is the fibrosis and what is the fibrosis grade. The grade is subjective wise grading. No fibrosis is grade 0, mild, moderate, and severe. Severe is grade 3. It is a subjective wise observation. But as I mentioned in my previous, whether the fibrosis is limited to the endocardium, perivascular fibrosis, or replacement fibrosis, that you have to mention in your report. Role of endomyocardial biopsies in cardiomyopathies. If the clinician is evaluating dilated cardiomyopathy, usually the endomyocardial biopsies are not done. But in case if he wants to know the disease process, they do. Because dilated cardiomyopathy, the most common cause is post-viral. The patient had viral myocarditis long back, and later on autoimmune process are developed, causing continuous destruction to the heart, leading to finally failing dilated heart. If he wants to know the inflammatory process, he do before transplant the endomyocardial fragments. Most of the time in this scenario, what we observe, the findings are non-specific. Like you see variable hypertrophy of the cardiomyocyte, variable degree of fibrosis, and if you're lucky enough, sometimes you do see a lot of fibrosis and inflammation, then the clinician will take up next step for his treatment. That you can observe. In case of hypertrophic cardiomyopathy, there are certain histological microscopic features which can identify and diagnose hypertrophic cardiomyopathy. These are cardiac muscle disarray, branching, interstitial fibrosis, and irregular medial thickening of the intramyocardial blood vessels. You can come to a conclusion of hypertrophic cardiomyopathy. One thing, if radiologically cardiac MRI and echo says hypertrophic cardiomyopathy, you need not have to do endomyocardial biopsy. But it is not always true. There are many variants of hypertrophic cardiomyopathies which cannot be diagnosed. That time endomyocardial biopsy will be of help. Yes, in restrictive cardiomyopathies, endomyocardial biopsy fragment is of importance. This is a one case where this child presented with endomyocardial fibrosis. This is low flux endomyocardial fibrosis. You can make out thick endocardial fibrosis, inflammatory infiltrate, evidence of hemorrhage, eosinophils, and there are some histiocytic aggregates and smooth muscles in the subendocardium. So we'll diagnose this as endomyocardial fibrosis, which is of help in case of restrictive cardiomyopathy. In case of amyloid, you need to demonstrate. If the clinician suspect amyloid, cardiac MRI gives specific diagnosis criteria for amyloidosis, but the gold standard is always you have to demonstrate amyloid. So you can see amyloid is deposited. The eosinophilic hyalinized material, acellular material is deposited in the interstitium here. It is deposited in the subendocardial space, perivascular region, and even in intramyocardial blood vessels. It has been deposited. So just you can do and diagnose an endomyocardial biopsy. You have to do crystal violet and Congo red stain. One thing you should remember, the normal HND other special stains, you need to take out 3 to 4 or 4 to 5 micron thickness. If you want to carry out Congo red, those things will not work. You will negative. You need to take a thicker sections, almost 8 micron thickness, then only your Congo red stain will be work. And if you do polarized microscopy, it is very beautifully you can demonstrate the apple green birefringence. That is again confirmatory for amyloid, not the type of amyloid. As Dr. Raghavendra said in his previous lecture, if you want to type, you have to go for LCMS studies. It costs more. For now, deposition and diagnosis of amyloid is confirmed. So this beautiful apple green birefringence. As I told you in restrictive cardiomyopathy, these are interfiber fibrosis. Can you make out the empty stain? Each and every cardiac muscles surrounded by this bluish wavy fibers, that is cardiac intermyocardial fibrosis. If you can rule out all the etiological factors, finally, with this histopathology, you will come to a diagnosis that it is a case of idiopathic restrictive cardiomyopathy, and you have to analyze for genetic mutations in future. In sarcoidosis, can you see the first picture? One fragment, good fragment, but essentially unremarkable. Second fragment is fine. Third fragment is fine, but this fragment is tiny, but it is showing the diagnostic feature. That's why in all routine screening, all the microscopic small fragments you have to evaluate. Although this is tiny, but this is giving the diagnosis. If you go to higher power, there is a granuloma, Langerhans type of giant cells, non-necrotizing granuloma, causing destruction to the myocardium, then your diagnosis will be done. This is a clinical and radiological evaluation with this biopsy. It is a case of sarcoidosis. Patient can be treated with steroids. He'll be improved. So these are the things which is helpful for this thing. The giant cell myocarditis, how does it look? When the biopsy is taken, you will see multiple giant cells, both foreign body and Langerhans type of giant cells. You'll see a lot of inflammation, myocyte damage. See how these giant cells are eating up the cardiac myocytes, but you will not see any definitive granulomas. That is one of the criteria to say as giant cell myocarditis. Before you label it as giant cell myocarditis, you need to carry out all the special stains to rule out all the causes of infectious reagents. Because, so there is very important thing. If you demonstrate infectious agents, the treatment will be according to the sensitivity of those organisms. They will not give any corticosteroids. If you say it is giant cell myocarditis, they will treat with corticosteroids. For example, you will say giant cell myocarditis, but actually it is infectious etiology. You are not ruled out. If the clinician prescribes corticosteroids, the clinical conditions will worsen and the patients will die. So these are the very important. This is a very pivotal role of pathologists in all these cases. And very rarely, some conditions called as arrhythmogenic right ventricular cardiomyopathy, clinical echo findings and cardiac MRI will be sufficed for the diagnosis of ARVC. But sometimes when it is not fully pronounced, it is not fully developed, that time endomyocardial biopsy fragment will be of help. See this, the endomyocardium, this is the heart muscle, is completely replaced with fatty tissue and fibrosis. If you see this kind of a scenario, you can label it as arrhythmogenic right ventricular cardiomyopathy. One of the most important scenario of endomyocardial biopsies is transplant scenario. When the patient undergoes heart transplantation, what happens? The diseased heart will be taken out and the donor heart will be placed. Okay, this is the layman terminology. So when the layman donor heart is placed in diseased heart, they will switch all the greater blood vessels, but nerves will not be stitched. So diseased heart will be, he will not present with any myocardial ischemia infection or any kind of derangement. He will not present with the angina pectoris. So you need to identify the disease process at the early stage to prevent the transplant failure. That's why the very still now the endomyocardial biopsy as a surveillance procedure in heart transplant, it is the foremost important criteria. What do we see? We see two stages, either acute cellular rejection and humoral mediated rejection. The international guideline says that once the patient undergoes heart transplantation, first week, you just remember and think or imagine this procedure. First week, you need to take every week, first month, every week you need to take endomyocardial biopsies. In the initial first year, acute cellular rejection is most common. If you can detect, it can be treated, patient survival can be improved. Second month, every 15 days, you need to perform endomyocardial biopsies. Third to fourth month, every month, and till every 3 months in 9 to 12, every year. After a year, usually they will not perform. Every 2 to 3 years, one endomyocardial biopsy. Think of a heart transplant patient with a major procedure. During the first year of post-transplant, how many endomyocardial biopsies he is going to take? And each biopsy, according to adequacy criteria, 5 fragments. Think of so many. So it is these guidelines usually not followed. It's very important so that if you detect acute cellular rejection, you can save the patient. There is International Society of Heart and Lung Transplant 2004. They have made certain criteria when to say how to grade this acute cellular rejections. What are these? You call it as grade 1. Amongst 5 endomyocardial fragments, only one focus is showing cardiac damage. We call it as grade 1. Like this, myocardial damage, we call it as grade 1. How the damage should be? Just like your Dallas criteria. These inflammatory cells, most of them are T cells. They have to destroy the cardiac myocytes, eat up the cardiac myocytes. Then you call it as grade 1. When you say grade 2, the 2 foci, 1, 2, and intervening cardiac myocyte is normal. You call it as grade 2R. When it is diffuse, you call it as grade 3R. So these are the 3 different grades. If you have a doubt, if you want any clear evidence, you can as well do leukocyte common antigen IHC. It will clearly demonstrate the number of lymphocytes in that myocardium and the area where there is cardiac damage. Quilty lesions, it is very important. That is a reactive process that you see in transplant. It has no connections with the type of rejection. All of you should remember. If you see quilty lesion, it is subendocardial reactive lymphoid collection. You should not label it as acute cellular rejections. There are 2 subtypes, quilty A and B. All of you can read it. And to see antibody-mediated rejections, we usually carried out C4D, like in renal stain. And C4D, if you want to say positivity, you have to demonstrate a strong positivity in almost 50% of the intramyocardial blood vessels. Then only you can call it as humoral mediated rejections. Along with that, presence of histiocytes, CD68 positive histiocytes within the capillary lumen, it also indicates the evidence of early evidence of humoral mediated rejection, that is antibody mediated rejections. There are proposed criteria. I'm not going to go detail because of time constraint. All of you can read this regarding the criteria antibody mediated rejections. And endomyocardial biopsy in rare scenario. Earlier they used to do the monitoring of cardiotoxic drugs. Nowadays it's not performed in many centers. And just for your theoretical knowledge, most of the cancer patients, they are prescribed with radio and chemotherapeutic drugs. Most of the patient chemotherapeutic drug which is prescribed to the cancer patients, they are all cardiac toxic effects. And recent data also shows that the post-treatment chemotherapeutic, especially in cancer patients, majority of the death is not due to cancer, is due to heart failure due to cardiotoxic drugs. In some centers, they need to monitor. If the chemotherapeutic agent is truly cardiac thoracic, they need to mention and titrate the dose. That time they do endomyocardial biopsy. This is one example taken from the cardiovascular pathology published in 2010. So presence of sarcoplasmic lamellar bodies, doxorubicin toxicity. These are all drugs, old drugs. Now they have changed. So presence of calculations will indicate a degree of myocardial damage, and you can guide the clinicians regarding this. This is one case where we diagnosed, last slide, the patient present with unexplained heart failure. All etiology came negative. He was perfectly fine. They evaluated everything. Endomyocardial biopsy was done, but with close observations, first time we found some kind of an inclusions in the cardiac myocyte, which was highlighted by empty stain. And this is the Desmin stain. This also shows that these inclusions are strongly Desmin positive. When we did electron microscopy, it shows granulofilament material. This shows that this patient had Desmin cardiomyopathy. Later on, he was done, evaluated for skeletal muscle survey. They did skeletal myobiopsy, and again in the biopsy, it was confirmed that this patient is having Desmin cardiomyopathy. So these rare cases, you can also diagnose by endocardial biopsies. Lastly, very rare, in the proper categorization, especially of primary cardiac tumors, you need to take biopsies. Endomyocardial biopsies has a role. And in case if you want to demonstrate metastatic lesion to the heart, for microscopic demonstration, you need to take biopsy. In that scenario, you also need endomyocardial biopsy fragment. It is one of the indications. In some cases, when you have a glycogen storage diseases with cardiac involvement, they do perform endomyocardial biopsy fragment. These are pretty rare. With this, the take-home message from my talk is endomyocardial biopsy is safe. It has got very minimal risk and no mortality at all, with which is when it is performed by experienced heart transplant monitoring. In the evaluation of myocarditis in all cases of unexplained sudden heart failure patients. And one thing I request, who are all there in the pathology, if they have cardiologists, if you have radiologists, you have to encourage these people to carry out this endomyocardial biopsy procedure. And always, not only in cardiology, in all specialties, I strongly believe that diagnosis is always to be done by a multidisciplinary approach. It is not only pathology. Most of the times, diagnosis, you will come with rare and very important diagnosis only done by multidisciplinary approach. And I should thank Dr. Shashikala ma'am. Ma'am can remember, we started this with multidisciplinary approach and presentation. I request all the pathology department, you have to show your importance and discuss with the clinicians, call up the clinicians and make it close and very group so that you can interact and your knowledge will improve and it's for the better patient care. Any comments from Shashikala ma'am?
Exactly, Sudhir. Dr. Nagaraj was the principal, that time when you were there.
Yes.
And we started.
Yes.
This, it was the beginning. Yes.
Yes. So with this, I'll conclude my talk. Thank you very much. If you have any queries, anything, I'm happy to answer.
Yeah, that was a very informative lecture, and you discussed very well on the interpretation aspects of the endomyocardial biopsies. There are some questions. Somebody has asked, they want to know when should the biopsy be done in hypertrophic cardiomyopathy cases, as it is one of the cause for sudden cardiac death. That's the question.
So most of the time, what happens, there are, if you see, one of the most common genetic association in cardiomyopathy is hypertrophic cardiomyopathy. It has got strong genetic associations. So, but the morphology is almost not always same. So we say that there is irregular septal hypertrophy, left ventricular hypertrophy. There are different morphological variations in hypertrophic cardiomyopathies. If it is classical and cardiac radiologist, cardiac MRI says, and echo findings says it is a hypertrophic cardiomyopathy, you need not have to do biopsy. But it is not always true in most of the cases. You do see septal hypertrophy, you do see some kind of arrhythmic changes. Echo says hypertrophy, but they are not classical of hypertrophic cardiomyopathy. And a cardiac MRI, there are certain criteria. They say it may be, it may not be. In those scenarios, you have to do endomyocardial biopsy. If possible, you can demonstrate these myocardial disarray, irregular connections with the cardiomyopathy. Then those scenarios you have to carry out endomyocardial biopsies.
Yeah, there's one more question by Dr. Manika madam. Special stains, what are special stains you do routinely?
Yes. So first and foremost is the evaluation at All Indian Institute of Medical Sciences is we do carry out biopsies for heart transplant patients. In heart transplant patients, in all biopsies, empty stain is must. You need to demonstrate and grade the fibrosis. You have to do empty stain. Along with that, the leukocyte common antigen stain to demonstrate, because the cardiac interstitium is so scant, the presence of interstitial cells is easily misdiagnosed for lymphocytes. You need to demonstrate. So leukocyte common antigen stain we do perform regularly in all the biopsies. And the antibody mediated rejections. Sometimes there is a criteria that histologically negative, immunologically positive rejections. In these criteria, we do perform CD68 and C4D stain compulsorily, all those things. And if you think amyloidosis, CRCV with polarized microscopy suffice. And if you say any inflammatory, for example, nowadays we started doing stains for viral myocarditis. Hardly they do endomyocardial biopsies for infectious agents, but we got one infectious agent, Candida, in a small baby, later on succumbed to disease. By the time we diagnosed, it was late. So those kinds, depending on if it is a fungus, carry out DPAS and SM stain. If you think it is a bacterial, go for Gram stain, and depending on the scenario, so that you can carry out all the stains.
Okay. Then I have a question from my side. When do you require electron microscopy especially? When electron microscopy is a must, in which condition?
So one thing is when you have isolated glycogen storage diseases, one unexplained cardiac myopathies. So there are many myopathies, the skeletal myopathies, they spare the heart. Some myopathies, they involve the heart, both the skeletal. Some myopathies, they initially present with cardiac involvement. Later on, they develop with the skeletal muscle disease. That's what happened in Desmond cardiomyopathy. So usually we discuss, most of the times we'll not keep for electron microscopy, because nowadays we have good procedure and protocol, so that even if you have formalin fixed tissue, you can retrieve the biopsy and process it for electron microscopy. So you can do it in a retrospective fashion. So only those conditions we keep for electron microscopy.
Okay. Like the biopsy is done under any guidance, radiological guidance?
Yes. Always done and cardiac path lab. Interventional cardiac pathologist will be there, and usually it is found by interventional cardiologist and interventional cardiac radiologist.
Is it combined with MRI, cardiac MRI, under guidance they do, or it is without?
Cardiac with guidance, because you need to monitor the probe. It has to be done with guidance. It is done always in the cath labs.
Okay, that was a wonderful session.
Dr. Parinita, with your permission.
Yeah, ma'am.
Very happy to say Parinita was our student too in Chaitanya Medical College. Dr. Sudhir, very lucid presentation, such clear thoughts, so well delivered content and very easy to understand. You were a good teacher and you have really improved, honed your skills, I should say.
Your guidance, ma'am. We learned many things from you. I should thank you for everything, ma'am.
Very nice, so your cognitive domain and skills, of course, in delivering this. And one more thing I just want to tell all the juniors who are here, the affective domain. Though Sudhir has, climbed the success ladder, he still remembers, from where he started, the original thing. So that's great. That's very nice. That is the one, if you're ruled by your heart, as Swami Vivekananda says, that takes you to greater heights. So we have Dr. Kavita and
Dr. Deepti madam, hi. Deepti madam, hi.
So
hi, Kavita madam, hi, ma'am.
Congratulations, very good presentation.
Very good presentation.
Very happy to hear you after a very long time.
Thank you very much, ma'am.
Very good. Proud of you, Sudhir. God bless you. All the best.
Yes, ma'am. We're blessings, ma'am. Thank you.
Yeah, I thank
Any more
Dr. Sudhir
questions?
for this presentation. I thank the organizing team